Musical People and Journeys album reviews, back for yet another wicked episode of 7 amazing albums. Welcome to the team. Hi Dave.
Hello.
Hi Chris.
Hi Nod.
Chris
made it back.
He's made it back. Oh, we weren't quite sure whether. Yeah, I know, right? We were discussing whether it was just nice to hear your words rather than seeing your face. But I prefer to see your face.
I was going to say, and what was the decision after all that? Because, you know...
Well, it was a bit split, to be perfectly honest with you. But
I'm right with that. At least there was somebody wanted to see my face. That's fine.
Ian, hi there.
Hi.
Welcome back. Glad you could fit us in your diary this time, mate. Rather double booking yourself.
I know.
Seeing babies and stuff. And hi, Trish.
Morning.
Ever the stalwart. Double episode this weekend. 14 albums.
To say,
14 albums.
I love Trish's Bob Ross background. That's amazing.
Thanks. I've only just found out who Bob Ross is.
Yeah, and you'll want to forget him, let's be honest about it, but there we go.
Ooh.
Controversial. Not a Bob Ross fan. Right, okie dokie.
I'll leave it on there then.
I know, leave it on there. Oh, that's very friendly. So, what an interesting, I'd say an interesting lineup that we have here. So, where do we go from? We've got, we're going to open up with Perfect Plan, and then we've got Sparta, and then Siouxsie and the Banshees. What the? Ugly Kid Joe, Avantasia, Skid Row, and headlining. Oh, welcome back, maybe. Arctic Monkeys, been a long time, but Arctic Monkeys are back with their new album. So all exciting stuff. Now we're going to change it a bit for YouTube viewers. We can't obviously play music, but so when you hear us go and we're having a sample, that's because we're also recording on Spotify. So if you want to actually have a sample of the bands, go and listen to us on Spotify, and there'll be a little rolling bar down the bottom that will send you the details of where to go for that one. So right, well, we're going to start with a band that I've never heard of. So Perfect Plan and Brace for Impact. Are we going to brace for impact? Well, let's go and find out then. So Chris, we've missed you. So let's start with you, Chris. Then. So have you heard of Perfect Plan before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Brace for Impact. Should we be bracing ourselves for impact here, Chris?
Well, I think Brace for Impact was probably the perfect name for this album because it made me want to stick my head between my knees and sniff my own asshole. It was. Do you know what? I can't be too mean about it because it was very rock opera and it was very dramatic and that kind of thing. And I just can't get behind it. I've got enough drama in my life. I don't need to listen to over an hour of someone else being melodramatic. So, Perfect Plan it may well have been, but in execution, it just didn't work for me.
Okay, so Dave, did you smell your bottom, or was that not on the table?
Well, that wasn't the first
it.
thing that came to mind when I heard this album. Oh God, to be honest,
I mean, I would rather listen to Ozzy than sniff my own bottom. I mean, to be perfectly frank, but there we go. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, you know, it's all very 80s. This album for me, musically, everything you'd expect from something sort of that era, even though it's not of that era. Moments when it is really enjoyable, there's some good guitar riffs, but ultimately it just falls a little flat. It's just really not to my liking at all. It's not something I think I'd ever return to, but I mean it's not awful. If you're into this sort of type of rock, you might enjoy it. But yeah, for me, definitely a no-go.
What type of rock? I mean, you're saying type of rock. Well, for you, how would you analogize that?
I don't know. It's got a very sort of 80s feel, as I say to it. I mean, it is hard rock, but it's not really it's not modern hard rock, so it does lack a little bit of oomph to it. It's sort of almost moving towards your sort of power metal, which, as you know, I don't enjoy at all. It's just not to my liking at all.
Trish, based on those two top comments there, I would imagine you probably loved this album then.
Okay. This Swedish rock band sound is a throwback to the 80s of sound akin to Survivor and Foreigner. It's an entertaining album of melodic rock, but I don't feel they have any direction in their music. It's very generic to bands of that time, which they are trying to be, but not as polished or anything different to stand out. The songs blended into one for me as I was listening. It was okay, as I love 80s rock, but it just didn't deliver enough for this rock chick.
I was going to say then, what does a rock chick need in terms of a delivery? Then I mean, let's not go there. We move swiftly on. Ian.
A rock chick needs a delivery of a massive Fender, huge Stratocaster, and a thumping bass line and drum line. I think that's
In
what
one.
a rock chick needs, definitely.
I'm actually tasting my breakfast again. I'm just saying.
Oh no, we go back to bottoms again. Anyway, I liked this album. I like the pumping rock. I like the strong vocals. Definitely an 80s influence. So I was really, as I started to listen to it, I'm thinking, why am I not really engaged? Because on paper, this is me. This is absolutely me. And I think Trish has just summed it up there. They just didn't have enough direction or purpose, if you like. It was good. I liked the ballads on there. I thought were great, like My Angel and Emily. Playing Emily over and over again in the car. I really like that track. Devil's Got the Blues is a nice sort of almost country, not quite country, that's not the wrong word, but that nice sort of influence there. And I loved that intro to Bring Me a Doctor. That was so deliciously melodramatically 80s. It was brilliant, that little vocal intro. But that was it. On the whole album, just those 4 little bits, and the rest of it was just a bit meh. So I was hoping for more, thought I'd really like it. It was all right.
Yeah, and here's my thing. I think I've got on the same with you. I think if you're going to look, there's a lot of bands out there. There's a lot of albums out there. I mean, we've listened to it's coming up to about 130, 140 albums, and there are a lot of people competing in this space of that kind of that sort of that 80s kind of rock or harken back to that sort of generation of rock, and there are a lot of good bands out there, and the more I kind of listen to it in terms of stereotypical albums, you've got to stand out. And we've listened to stand out kind of the likes of Fozzy and people like that who do play in that space, but are more standout. And you've got to be standout. And for me, I'm kind of with you guys. It was something not standout for this. It was very generic. There wasn't anything special on it. It was okay. It was a decent album without being a really good album. It was just very generic, and there was nothing really stand out in it. And look, we've listened to a lot of albums, and we listen to a lot, and we know when something stands out. You go, even if you like to the likes of Hailstorm, who very much are right up the pinnacle of that tree of this sort of music. You've got to stand out, and you've got to be incredibly well produced, and you've got to be producing tracks that are memorable. And there was just really nothing here that really stood out. It was an okay listen to, wasn't it? It was just all right from that perspective. But
I don't want to pause in your analogy too much there, mate. But the difference between somebody like Perfect Plan and Hailstorm is a whole bunch of money. Hailstorm have actually got the backing of a big record company and that kind of thing. I do wonder, whilst I didn't like it and it didn't really tickle my pickle or anything, if Perfect Plan had a bunch of money and a decent studio behind them, there is a good chance that they could have made a better album. I mean, these are just normal kind of people that I don't know, the production value was really, really good for the budget that they had, and actually saying something against it would be a bit mean, because we've listened to a lot. It's usually these little people that do really well with us. Unfortunately, I just can't agree that I just didn't like it. I mean, it's not that it was bad. I just didn't like it.
I don't think any of us have said it wasn't bad. Nobody here has said it's an awful album. It's not. It's an okay album. But we've also listened to bands. I mean, look at Mantra with their production value and other stuff. There are, and I can't remember the band that sent us in their tape. And
Bone Driver.
Bone Driver, you know, I mean, their production, we know it was good, but there was something stand out musically about and the way that they wrote their songs up. Anyway, right, so, well, this is the penultimate show. We've got tomorrow's show before that. You've got to hit the magic 20 to get into our Hall of Fame and the shortlist for Album of the Year. Will they get it? What do you think? Let's find out, shall we? Ian.
So I did say overall meh, but I think okay is better. It's a 3 out of 5 for me.
3 out of 5. Dave. You're on mute, Dave. Thanks for ruining my podcast, mate.
Middle of the road as they come, mate. 2 out of 5.
Well, that's not middle of the road, is it? What is your name, Trish? Is your name Trish? Middle of the road is 2.5, isn't it?
That's what I said, 2.5.
Oh, did you? I thought you said 2. My apologies. Okay, I'm getting senile in a minute. Trish.
2.5.
2.5. Chris.
I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. Same as Ian for me. Slightly better than average. A 3 from me. So, well, 5, 8, 11, 13. That's not terrible, is it? That's slightly above average. Or average in some people's worlds, but there we go. So let's have a little listen. Let's have a listen and see what you guys out there think. So we're going to play Emily from the album, which was one of the standouts there for Ian. So here's Emily by Brace, from the album Brace for Impact. By Perfect Plan. So next on stage, we've got Sparta by Sparta. I can't help myself when I say the word Sparta. I kind of have to go into that sort of blur, really. Anyway, so Dave, let's start with you then. Sparta. Have you heard of Sparta before? And what did you? This is a bit of an off piece, really. I wasn't. Well, what did you think of it?
First time I listened to it, I found it really interesting. In fact, I had to listen to it about 3 or 4 times because I just couldn't make my mind up whether I was enjoying it or not. Ultimately, I decided I didn't, but I have to respect the effort anyway. It's varied throughout. I can see what they're trying to do a lot of the time. I think it's the vocals for me that I really didn't enjoy. But I'll tell you what, I'd be very interested to see as a band how they develop, and it is a band that I will keep an eye open for. Because, as I say, even though I didn't quite enjoy this effort, I can see that there's a lot of talent there, and I can appreciate what they're trying to do.
What sort of rock would you put this under, though?
This is kind of more indie rock, I suppose. It reminded me a lot of some of the indie bands from the 90s. In fact, it did remind me of someone, and I still, for the life of me, can't put my finger on exactly who. But every time I hear it, I'm like, it does definitely remind me of someone from the 90s, but I just couldn't put my finger on it.
Okay, and so, interesting you say indie rock, but we'll kind of maybe come back to that and see whether everybody else agrees. Trish?
I'd never heard of Sparta. To me, the album is very indie rock, which I either like or don't, depending on the artist. So would I like Sparta? Yeah, I did. Some of the songs had a sound of The Cure to them, to me, who I love. Three Rivers had a bit of a distorted sound to it, but it worked. It wasn't a bad to listen to, and nice to have a bit of a mix to the list, and again introduced me to new music, but I didn't like them enough to invest into looking further into their other albums.
So I can see where you're going there with The Cure, maybe, but maybe I think the Cure a bit more esoteric. But Ian, what did you think of Sparta? Was this up your tree, mate?
I really wanted to open this segment with me saying I am Sparta, or this is Sparta, but I couldn't. I think it was the genre isn't my genre, which really worked against it, because I tried to be as open-minded as I can, even if I don't like the genre, and I just couldn't. I definitely appreciate what they did. I thought it was definitely indie, but I also thought it had a bit of a progressive rock sound, prog rock sound to it, and it got that sort of trippy, echoey rock in places as well. I absolutely loved the song Spiders. I thought that was beautiful. but there was nothing else that really engaged. It was one of the ones when you're listening to it, I have them all downloaded into a separate podcast in the car and then listen to it as I'm driving around. And there's sometimes you hear a song and you think, yeah, the next few tracks I'm going to love. And this was one of the ones where I'm like, no, we'll get to Spiders sooner or later. But I think it's more my personal taste than against the genre, rather than the album not being very good, if you see what I mean.
Oh, and let's be honest about this, our ratings are not based on how it's produced or anything else like that. Our ratings are purely based on how much we enjoyed the album, so and we make no bones about that. So Chris, you've been more into this, you've delved more into this sort of rock more than anybody, have you not?
I try and listen to all kinds of stuff, mate, as you well know. So, yeah, I suppose so. Interestingly, my opinion echoes a bit of both Trish and Dave, where musically it was really, really interesting, and I liked what they did, and it sounded really good. But conversely, it was a bit like Muse, where I really enjoyed musically until the singer started singing. I think he was just a little bit too Morrissey for my liking. It's the kind of stuff that would just make me, maybe if I wanted to rub one out because I hate myself and then use Tears as lube, maybe I'd whack some Sparta on. But it just didn't work for me. I don't like Morrissey either, which doesn't really help. So as soon as he opened his mouth, that was it. I was done. I still managed to get through the whole album. It was definitely a one and done for me, though. I definitely won't be going back to it.
Whatever's wrong with you, Chris, is no small thing.
I've been trying to tell you that for a long time.
Oh, I mean, that's why we have him on the show, because it's like, we need the evidence, don't we? Really, when we finally get him submitted, we need evidence to.
That's why I always hug myself like this.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I was really kind of. I didn't quite know how to describe it, and I think you guys have kind of led me to somewhere between Frank Carter and Rattlesnakes and Morrissey. They're kind of somewhere between that sort of band, but he weren't as up tempo maybe as Frank Carter was, or more punky. But there was definitely that I found out was a bit more sort of punk rock influence in there, but at a little bit of a slower pace. So it's kind of interesting to go. Yeah, and I kind of nodded when you said about Morrissey from that kind of speaking part. But I tried to mix this podcast up really, or the albums of review, and try to bring in some different artists and kind of. Otherwise, we'll just be listening to. The same old thing, and so for me it was interesting. I agree with Ian. I think Spiders was the standout track, and I agree. It would be the only track I would really probably want to listen to again. For me, and I go with Chris. It was a one hit. I was curious about it, but I wasn't curious enough to go, unlike Dave, to keep going back and listen to it again and again and again. It was I had a couple of listens, and that was about it really. But it was okay. It was okay. It was an okay album. It was. I think if you really like that sort of type of music, I think it's going to be a really good album from that perspective as well. So right, well, will it make our Hall of Fame? Magic number 20 again. Let's find out. Trish, let's start with you then. No, Dave, we started with you, didn't we? So let's give your marks.
2.5 out of 5. That's 2.5.
2.5. That's right in the middle. That is actually.
It is, yeah.
Okay, Trish.
2.5.
2.5. Ian.
2 out of 5.
2 out of 5. Chris.
2.5.
2.5. Wow. Do you know what? If only Ian had gone 2.5. If only Ian, we would have had across the board 2.5, because that's exactly what I give it as well. 2.5.
Do you know what, Nige? I just in light of what you've said, no, I'm going to stick exactly where I'm at.
There's no takey backsies. As soon as you utter the score, there are no takesy backsies. So, but a 12, which it's not bad. It's not bad. We go from that way. So okay. Well, the track we're going to play, no surprise. See what you guys out there in listening land think, and whether you agree with us or not. Here is Spiders by Spatter. So we are going to welcome on stage Siouxsie and the Banshees. Now, this is all about a journey. This is a journey that we've started, and you guys have joined me on. And I would have not. There's a band based on my previous experience of the 90s and 80s. Would be not an album that I would have gone and listened to for Siouxsie and the Banshees. So I was definitely intrigued, and again, it's a journey, and without any shadow of a doubt, they are definitely a rock band. Trish, let's start with you then. You must have, from our generation, remember Siouxsie and the Banshees. So how did this fit for you? Because I would say this is probably not something a bit like me that you have not gone and gone, oh, I've got to listen to their new album.
Yeah, I mean, I know of Siouxsie and the Banshees. They weren't my cup of tea back in the day, but I went in open-minded with this album, hoping I may be surprised and discover Siouxsie and the Banshees I might actually want to listen to. However, this was not the case. I'm not sure really how to describe the album or their sound. Some of the songs seem to have others mixed in with them. For me, this album didn't bring me anything. If I had to pick any song from the album, perhaps Peekaboo. But all this album really made me feel was boo-hoo.
Oh, God. Right. So, Ian, Siouxsie and the Banshees, your cup of tea, mate?
I was hoping that this was going to be another trip down memory lane that was going to be fantastic ride, awesome. And it definitely started with AW, but it wasn't awesome. I thought it was awful. There was those echoing vocals again, but overly used all the way through. And I liked Peekaboo. It had that sort of Eastern European flavour to it as well, and I liked it because it was the standout track. I didn't like it because I wanted to play it over and over again. It was just something that was different from the rest of it. I think the nicest way to say this is it's very niche. You say that as a nice way of saying it, isn't it? But ultimately, for me, it was very disappointing.
Chris, how about you? Christoph?
So I want to preface this with just saying I genuinely thought she was dead. And so, I was very surprised when she dropped an album because, people do posthumous albums and stuff. But, now having listened to it, as with everything, mate, I went into it with an open mind. And I really wish she hadn't released it and that it probably was done posthumously because it was just bad. I mean, plain bad. There's nothing I can say even remotely redeeming about this album. It was an album. It was released. I feel like, people from the late 70s, early 80s, some people can pull off a comeback. Like Billy Idol, still in our Hall of Fame, is he not? But some people just shouldn't do it. Siouxsie and the Banshees definitely shouldn't have done it.
No, Billy Idol's not in the Hall of Fame. He got in the top 20, but he didn't quite make the Hall of Fame. So. Oh,
bless him! But he still made it. I mean,
he's really high up. I'm still thinking in the top 20 albums. But it was an EP, though. It was an EP. So.
Yeah, I know. That was the early days as well, way back when.
Yeah. When we were a bit more lenient and not so brutally harsh as we are now, or some of us are.
I was going to say, speak for yourself.
Oh, okay, Dave. Are you going to shine some light on Siouxsie and the Banshees?
No, that's not really my sort of thing at all. I did try, and as I said, a lot of other people have said, sort of approach it with an open mind, though. I just found this so mind-numbingly boring. I've zoned out most of the times I listened to this. There would be like whole parts of the album where I was just daydreaming, couldn't tell you anything about it. The only song that stand out for me was Peekaboo, and not because of I enjoyed it like others have said, but because there's something about that song that makes me want to either hurt myself or hurt other people. I can't put my finger on what it is, but it absolutely grates on me. Musically, nothing special. It's definitely not something I'm ever coming back to, that's for sure.
So remind me when you're with Chris to play Peekaboo for you, and then you get to hurt him. That'll be pleasant.
Me and Dave have been playing Peekaboo for 25 years, mate. It's fine. Don't worry about
it. I'm going to buck the trend a little here because I went into this album actually open-minded as I do, but actually pretty much on the precipice that I was gonna, based on what I remembered them, I was probably gonna hate it. And it took a couple of tracks for me to tune in, but actually I really tuned into it. I actually genuinely quite enjoyed the album. I thought it was, I don't know, maybe because I was hankering for something a little bit different, that was a different pace, that was a different, maybe it was in the mood I was in, I don't know, but I genuinely, actually, after the first couple of tracks, I got into the album, and I actually genuinely, and a couple of their tracks, made it to my cool playlist. I thought, I really enjoyed them. El Dios de Muertos, something like that, I can't remember how you pronounced it, and yeah, Peekaboo was quite good. And I actually ended up listening to the album 3 or 4 times. I actually genuinely liked it. Don't ask me how or why, because I wouldn't bracket myself into this cup of tea. But I thought you probably look like a female version of Morrissey, really, but with a bit more to it. I just liked it. I just liked it. It was just something a little bit different, and I thought it was okay. I'm personally glad that they resurrected it, because it's a different sound, and we need something different, and to kind of mix it up a little bit. Otherwise, it's all going to get very generic and quite boring. So, I disagree. I thought this was a well done album, and it was really good, and it was a nice change of pace, and it was well produced, and it was good. And I thought they did a really good album. So. There we go. And who would have thought that? I would not have thought that. When I first listened to the album, I was cringing. I was going, oh God, why it was going to be? But I thought it was a bit more commercial than their stuff from the 80s and 90s, and I quite enjoyed the album. So yeah, I would on their next album go out and have another listen to their next album for sure. But there we go. Right, well, so Trish, let's start with you then. I'd fancy this is not going to get into our Hall of Fame and get to our albums of the year, but let's see where it ends up. So Trish.
0.5.
Oh, that's harsh. Ian.
I gave this a 1 out of 5, and it's El Dios de los Muertos.
Okay, Chris.
Siouxsie is a treasure, mate, because I still can't work out where they dug her up from. 0.5 out of 5.
Dave?
The most generous of 1 out of 5.
You guys are just Philistines. 3.5 for me. 3.5. I mean, if I was going along your guys, this would be worse than Marillion and stuff. It was a better album than that. So we got 4, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5. Oh, that's harsh. I don't think that was a bad album really, but there we go. So I don't think it's reached our bottom, but it's certainly in the bottom 3, which is a shame. But there we go. Right, the track we're playing, Ian, you can pronounce it for me, my friend. You did it better than I did. So we're going to play
El Dia de los Muertos.
So there we go. Hope you enjoyed. Comments, please. What did you guys think of Siouxsie the Bench? Right, change of pace. Back we are with the legends that are Ugly Kid Joe, and the name of the album is. Somebody tell me the name of the album.
Rad Wings of Destiny.
Yeah, what a title of a song. What the hell does Rad Wings of Destiny actually genuinely mean? Well, there's only one person that can explain that, only he's not here, so we're going to go to Ian instead. Hey Ian, Rad Wings of Destiny by Ugly Kid Joe. Surely back on track for you.
I think that I can explain the title.
Really?
I'm pretty confident I can explain the title.
Go for it, buddy, go for it.
It's a fantastic name for a title, and it needed to be, because it's Ugly Kid Joe. And it needs a great album, because the album just weren't that great. So the title needed to be huge. I was really expecting something really good. Just Everything About You was such a huge song, and maybe that has tainted. And I haven't listened to a lot of their other stuff, so I can't make any comparisons. Not that that's what we do here. But I thought it was nice. I've written down nice but uninspired album, and I didn't feel inspired by it either. I thought there were some really good influences on Long Road, in that track. I liked that track. As much as I wanted to, Ugly Kid Joe, I just couldn't. But it was okay. It was nice, but just didn't float my boat, unfortunately.
That's a surprise. I thought that was right up your kind of your alleyway on this one.
Yeah.
Chris, Ugly Kid Joe, mate. They must bring back memories for you.
They do, in fact. The first album that I ever bought myself was a compilation album called Marquee Metal, and Cats in the Cradle was on it. So that song does hold a special place in my shriveled dead heart. So I went into it quite full of optimism, and whilst the album didn't really live up to, Everything About You and Cats in the Cradle, I actually quite enjoyed it. It was pretty diverse. He went through a lot of different things. I think the only thing that makes me a bit sour on it is he's got one of those 60 Marlboro a day kind of voices, and because it's been that way since the early 90s, it's getting a bit too gravelly now. I think maybe he should probably quit soon, but that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the album. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit.
Wow. Okay, what was it? Any particular standout tracks for you then, mate? Or
No, it was a good background
Dog in the
album for me.
Box rather than Cat in the Cradle?
No, I just I had it on in the background. I gave it a few listens and just had it on while I was doing other stuff, and it was just, like Ian said, it was nice. It was a nice album.
Dave, Ugly Kid Joe, mate. I mean, obviously you got Cat in the Cradle and that sort of stuff as well. But was this something that you had high expectations for, or what?
Well, I only knew them really from the one song that obviously everyone's already mentioned. So I was interested to see what it was like. I listened to this straight after I listened to the previous album, the Siouxsie and the Banshees album, and this seems like an epic compared to that. Once I'd listened to it through again, I mean, I quite enjoyed it, but it's not amazing by any stretch. There's just enough variety throughout to keep me interested. Some really great riffs and hooks in there. Thought they did a very interesting cover of Lola. The original, though, is much better, by the Kinks, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm correct? Yep.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I really, really enjoyed Dead Friends Play, which I thought was a really nice tribute to some legends that are no longer with us. Definitely one that's been added to my playlist. So, overall, I can see myself going back to this. It's not spectacular, but, it's enjoyable. It's fun. Yeah, I'd recommend it.
So, Trish. Now, so we reveal that we saw Ugly Kid Joe supporting Greta Van Fleet, wasn't it? No, it wasn't Greta Van Fleet. Thunder. That's it. So we watched them supporting Thunder, and so my view going into the album was obviously slightly tainted, but that was something. But Ugly Kid Joe is definitely a band that I think you previously really liked. So how about this album? How did this sit for you?
So Radwig's Destiny is the 5th album release. Not Like the Other is a top-notch rock song, while Kill the Pain exudes Bon Jovi-esque sound, with the ballad thrown in for good measure. The only downfall is the sleazy cover of the Kinks' Lola. This is a good stuff album, gone from the grunge days of Everything About You. They have moved forward and into making a fine album, and one to definitely add to my playlist.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I came away from Thunder going, I don't want to listen to Ugly Kid Joe again. Apart from Cat in the Cradle, it was so generic on stage. It was just unbelievable, and I was fully expecting a very generic album. Fully expecting that, and I have to say, the first 4 tracks, including the standout "Everything's Changing," I'm going, wow. What an album! Oh my god, this is like so unexpected in terms of where we're going. And then they put Lola on, and it was trash. It was awful. It was the worst. I mean, you know what I'm like about covers, people. It's got to be different. What's the point? It is just like Oh, it was so bad. It was unbelievably bad. And I kind of switched off a little bit. And if you're going to do a cover like Lola, put it at the end of the album, you know, because it's just a throwaway kind of song, really. And I think they lost the plot a little bit there. But I saw where they were going. A lot of we've talked about a lot of rock bands like the Def Leppards and the sort of stuff have gone more that country kind of rock influence. And I detected that bit of rock influence, but credit where credit's due to them for this album. Other than Lola, it was an enjoyable album, particularly the first 4 tracks, and then it kind of come back a little bit. And I could see what they were doing. They were trying to move away from that generic kind of thing that they've done, and kind of mixed it up a little bit, and tried to go down different areas. And I absolutely applaud them for doing that. Just why people do you do it? I mentioned about Fozzy, and yeah, I've got to say, Relax Live was actually pretty good, but it was still fairly generic. You know, it was just like. Just frustrates the hell out of me. You know, if I want a cover of Lola, I go and listen to a cover song album. But and it was just an awful cover. But the first 4 tracks outstanding, and then a couple of the other tracks afterwards were pretty damn good as well. Overall, a really enjoyable album. Much better than I was expecting to from that side of things as well. So well done. I've got to say, kudos to Ugly Kid Joe for trying something a little bit different, and certainly trying to move away from generic pap that I thought they were going to come up with. So yeah, well done on that score. So okay. Why? Well, will it do enough, people? Will it do enough? So Ian, let's start with you then, mate.
So this I gave 2.5 out of 5.
Chris.
3.5 out of 5. Although I do have to agree with you, that cover of Lola was just dire.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Just frustrates the hell out of me why bands do it, but there we go. Dave?
I thought it was alright myself, but never mind. 3.5 out of 5.
Wow, okay. And Trish?
For the pure fact of the crappy cover of Lola, 4.5.
Ooh, would have got a 5. Wow. Okay. He also got a 3.5 out of 5 for me. I don't normally align with Chris. This is just like, ugh, this just doesn't feel right.
Can I also just point out that you did say if you wanted to listen to a cover, you go listen to a covers album, but you would only sit through a covers album once and then just spend the entire time whinging about how shit all the covers were. So
I wouldn't even listen to the covers album, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's be honest about it. I wouldn't. So you know, I don't hate all covers. I just need it to be different. It needs to be like something just so different from the original. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just do an exact copy and a bad copy of the original. Just like, I don't know, do a ballad or do a screamo version of Lola. You know, just do.
All right, I've got a pertinent question for you, which is actually quite good for the podcast. What did you think of the cover of Human that Hearts and Hand Grenades released?
I haven't listened to it yet.
You should have a listen to it. It's Human by Rag and Bone Man that they play to us everywhere. Yeah, so they've done a cover of it, and it's actually quite good.
Okay, I'm going to listen to that this weekend then. So anyway, right, okay, we've got 7, 11.5, 12, 15, 17.5. Wow, Ugly Kid Joe, you are back. I mean, and if you hadn't put Lola in, you might well have got damn well close to the Hall of Fame. I mean, so when MPJ says, do not put covers in, that's the difference. Could be the difference, people out there, if you listen to this. Not that you are, but you listen to this. Right, okay. See what you people think out there. Go and have a listen to Everything Is Changing by Ugly Kid Joe. So, next on stage, well, I tell you what, everybody, how do you fancy, right, all of us, okay, having a paranormal evening, okay, and I've just set up a date with the Moonflower Society. I mean, there we go. We could even name an album after that, a paranormal evening with the Moonflower Society. They've already done it. Avantasia, everybody, welcome to the stage. Wow, Avantasia. Okay, wow. What a name of an album. I mean, it's got to be probably the most pretentious name of an album. So let's go to the most pretentious person I know. Chris, what do you think of Avantasia, my friend?
I think that this is going to be pretty divisive, but I really like the album title. I'm really glad that they kind of went.
I love the album title, to be perfectly frank. But there we go.
So for me, I felt a lot like I was listening to the Labyrinth soundtrack. So it was very, very 80s. And to be fair, for the first track on it, I can't remember what the name is, but I had to go and make sure that my children hadn't been stolen by Tobias Sammet, the singer. As far as the album goes, I think it lives up to its quirky title, and it might work as a concept album, but I definitely couldn't see me listening to it every day. It's just a bit too melodramatic for me.
Sorry, melodramatic?
Absolutely.
For you?
Yep.
But you're one of the most melodramatic people I know.
Oh no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, talk about the opposite of melodramatic. Dave!
Oh, how can you say that that's a good title? That's just, it's fucking awful. It really is. To be honest with you, I quite enjoyed this album, apart from one thing, and that's the singer's voice. He was just so fucking annoying. It's a Jekyll and Hyde album, because one moment I'd be loving it and the next moment I'd want to turn it off and throw it away, never listen to it again. I can't see myself ever coming back to it, which is a real shame, because as I say, musically there's some absolute gems in there, but as soon as he starts singing, it just ruins the whole thing for me. I can't do it.
So, talking about ruining the whole thing, Trish. So we were going to put Black Veil Brides in, who we're going to watch next year, and you basically, well, Ian pointed out that it was an EP because I hadn't done my homework well enough, and thank you very much for that, Ian. And so you discovered this. You suggested this. You found them on Amazon, and German, super German rock band, Avantasia. So, what did you think of them?
So, Avantasia is a German supergroup metal opera project created by Tobias Sammet. He also is the vocalist of the band Ed Guy. It has been characterised as a rock opera, as it features the contributions of various vocalists and musicians, and it consists of concept albums. Alice Cooper has been a guest vocalist who have featured on Avantasia songs. With a title like A Paranormal Evening with the Moonflower Society, you have an expectation of something special. This album is a sumptuous feast of power metal. This is an all-you-can-eat album. I downloaded all their other albums and the lead singer's other band, Ed Guy, so needless to say, I loved it.
Interesting. Ian! Avantasia. Did you... Let's get a consensus here, obviously. What did you think of the name of the album title?
I loved the name of the album title, but then
You're all bloody weird.
Weirdly enough, I like the drama. I know that goes against sort of my taste and my likes.
Really? Wow, you don't like drama at all.
Not. So it's quite interesting to hear that they're German. I perhaps should have known that before. My favourite German word, and Nigel, you've probably heard me use this a lot, is ausgezeichnet. And ausgezeichnet means truly wonderful. It is the creme de la creme. It is amazing. So when I say to someone, that's was ausgezeichnet, that's such a huge compliment. And that's what this album, the title was ausgezeichnet, the album was ausgezeichnet. I thought it's got that beautiful anthemic symphonic rock to it. Now, we normally have that in the metal that I really like, but this was the rock. I thought the Inmost Light typifies this in the album. Absolutely loved that track. I loved, obviously I've got a passion for planes. So when there's a title on there called Paper Plane, I'm thinking, now is this going to be a Status Quo cover? Or is this going to be a cover of a Status Quo song? No, it was just amazing. Absolutely, I'm going to use the pun, it soared. Because it really did. The music soared on that. And if you like the title song, the Moonflower Society, I just found that to be diverse and dynamic. And overall, yeah, I agree with what I think it was Dave that said. at times he found himself just wanting to lob it out there, and the other was just like, I cannot stop listening to this. And for me, the majority was I cannot stop listening to this. And there were a couple of tracks where I just thought, why is that in there? And I know exactly why it's in there. The album challenges you, and they have those couple of albums just to remind you how fucking good the rest of it is. And I don't swear on this podcast, but this album makes me swear. Das was fucking ausgezeichnet.
It's interesting, isn't it? On first listen, I was right alongside Ian and Trish. In fact, I quickly downloaded a couple of tracks. Welcome to the Shadows, Misplaced Amongst the Angels, thinking, my God, this could be the album of the year, one of the albums of the year. By the time the fourth listen, I was right alongside Dave. It just got annoying, and longevity albums like this should not get annoying, and it just got annoying. I don't know why. It just I think I'm saying with Dave. I think the guy's voice just really just annoyed me, and it was weak in places. The more you listen to the album, the more that was exposed. I think anyway. And it was just a bit all over the place. I don't know why it just lost its momentum for me, and I thought, because I went to listen to it again, but hold on a minute, your first impressions, Nige, was that this was a stupendous album, and I think I might even text Trish, go, wow, what a great choice, what an album. But again, by the fourth listen, I was switched off. When we get to doing our albums at the end, they're repeatable albums, and for me this wasn't. It just lost it for me after a while. I'd say there's a couple of really good tracks on there which I really like, but overall it just kind of just died on me, and I can't really put my finger on why, because you know me, I love this sort of stuff. But it didn't. It lost its longevity for me on that one. So, right, okay. Well, it could push Hall of Fame. Let's find out, shall we? Chris.
Pretty firmly middle of the road. 2.5 out of 5.
2.5. Dave.
1.5 out of 5 for me.
No, it's not going to Hall of Fame. Not going down that road. Trish.
5.
5. Got a buzzer for Trish. Ian.
I can't change my background, but if I could, there'd be a load of gold stars behind me. 5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. You got a 3 from me. So, okay. So 13, 15 and a half, 16, 17. I mean, they're still solid guys. They're still going to be top 40 in terms of our albums. So, really, really good. So, let's have a listen, see what you guys think of this then. So what should we go for? You two got 5s. So any particular song? I was going to play "Misplaced Amongst the Angels," but what do you reckon? We'll go for that one. So here we go. "Misplaced Amongst the Angels." Let me know comments what you guys think of Avantasia, and thank you very much. So, the penultimate band that we're going to review today is Skid Row, and with Chris now back, the gang is all here. So, is the gang all here? Will the gang all go along the same road and find out what Skid Row was all about? Dave! Skid Row? Must have heard of Skid Row.
Oh yeah, of course. This is a really, really good album, but it's never in danger of being anything more than that. It's a very paint-by-numbers approach to making a rock album. They've done everything that everybody has established over the years works with a rock album. It's strong, but as I say, it's never going to be spectacular. I think most rock fans will enjoy this. Clearly, years of playing, they've perfected their sound, and it shows. Definitely fun to be had with this album. As I say, it's just not going to be. It's not groundbreaking, but it's definitely a fun listen.
Trish, Skid Row. This is right up your street. Surely Skid Row is going to be. I don't know. Tell us, talk to us. Bare your soul.
Okay. So as soon as I heard the first chord from Skid Row, it was like a breath of fresh air. Proper rock and roll that I love, where I'm stuck in a time warp from days as a teenager in the 80s when I listened to Skid Row. The Gang's All Here, title track, punchy sing-along chorus, a skid anthem. Drums, guitars, and thank God the Gang's all here. The album is just jam-packed of pure rock. It brought a smile to my face and had my head bopping along. In the words of Craig Revel Horwood, fabulous!
So, for our rock fans out there, if you've not heard of Strictly Come Dancing, you would have heard of Greg. So, anyway, so Ian, Skid Row?
Skid Row. This is me, innit? 80s. Love it. Motley Crue, all that lot. Skid Row. And I loved when they come out. They're huge ones. It was 18 Life and Skid Row. The song Skid Row was just fantastic. It wasn't called Skid Row. It's called something else. I can't remember what. But it was brilliant. It was really good. I was just really excited for this. But I was also hoping, because one thing this podcast has done, it's taught me that actually having that nice reminiscent trip down memory lane is great, but actually you want to see where that lane turns into. Did it turn into a big road, or did it just come to a dead end? And this actually went into a road. And I think partly there's only 3 members of the original lineup there, including the Scotty Hill, who did, I think Scotty Hill and Rachel Bolan did most of the songwriting back in the day. So it's good that they're still there, because this is a solid album. I agree with Trish. You know, I put here pure unadulterated rock, completely. But they have matured. They've got a much more mature sound. If you go back and listen to those 80s songs, they sound really, really 80s. I think Eric Grunwald, I think is how you pronounce it. His vocals are really powerful, very strong. It's a good album, and it was well put together. But it wasn't a fantastic album. I would absolutely encourage people to go and listen to this album if you want that good pure rock. Completely, absolutely. Just didn't quite hit that same level as Avantasia did for me in terms of the diversity, but it's a very, very strong rock album.
Chris, Skid Row.
So I really want to expand on what Ian said, and you know, the journey of a band is a really long one for some. Skid Row have been around since the late 80s. I think that album that he was talking about was released in 89, and in all that time I don't really feel like they've moved on at all. And in fact, you saying about his powerful vocals, I just think his voice is all worn out. It's a rock album. As to whether it's a good rock album, I personally don't think so. I would have hoped that in 30 years they'd have done something different, and they haven't. They've just gotten what they know they were famous for and then milked it like a prize cow. So for me, yeah, this didn't really work. I can't be all negative about it, because the riffs and the bass line for The Gang's All Here is fucking sexy, but it's it's less Skid Row and more Skid Mark for me.
I think the original singer was Sebastian Bach, and it's a different singer now. But I think if you heard Sebastian Bach on, if you thought that vocal wasn't strong, you'd be really disappointed, because Sebastian Bach's voice wasn't the best back in the day. But back in the day, you could get away with it. But yeah.
Well, as you know, Skid Row from my generation, so I am going to entirely agree with Chris. This is just hurtful for me to agree with Chris all the time. What the heck's going on? Honestly, Trish, breath of fresh air. It was stale air. It was exactly the same. There was no breath of fresh air. And I'm glad you're on mute, because you can't argue with me. So, So you're on mute. You're on mute, Trish. Hence, we didn't hear you. So the first two songs were good. The Gang's All Year. Yeah, you're right, Chris. Was a good riff. But then the third song, the fourth song, the fifth song, the sixth song, the seventh song, the eighth song, the ninth song, was exactly the same. It was okay. It was just there was no diversity in this album. It was one generic 80s rock tune after another, one after another after another. No diversity. Unlike Angry Kid Joe, other than the loader came, they changed it up, they varied it up, they tried to be different. There was no difference here. It was, I agree with what Dave said. They know what they do it best. But to do it for every single track of the album, it was all right. It was okay. It was a good listen. The Gang Is All Here is a good track, and it was just pap. It was just the same generic rock that I heard over and over again, and there was just nothing new to it. And for me, I did this podcast. I started this journey to discover new bands, to discover new sounds, new rock stuff that I felt I'd been missing for it, and to try and break away from a little bit. Still love that 80s rock if it's done really well, and this was just done okay for me personally. So, but there we go. So Trish, what you were saying? You were saying something when I said breath of fresh air there?
Yeah. In context, the reason it was a breath of fresh air was because I listened to it straight after the Arctic Monkeys album. Enough said.
Oh, spoilers! We don't want to get into that just yet, do we?
So, anyway, let's find out if it's going to get Hall of Fame. I fancy not, but Dave.
3.5 for me. I really enjoyed this. Got to be said.
Trish.
It's a 5 from me.
A 5 for Skid Row. The 5s are back on the Trishmobile. Ian.
That song, the massive song they had was Youth Gone Wild. Had to get that in. I got a 4 out of 5. Very strong 4 out of 5 for this one.
Chris.
1.5 out of 5.
Well, I don't think it was that bad, but I'll give it a 2.5, 5 because it was just very generic average down the road. But there we go. Okay, so we got 9, 9.5, 12.5, 13, 14, 16.5. So that's all right. There we go. So we are going to play. Let's see what you guys out there think. If you want to switch over to Spotify, you can switch over to Spotify. If you listen on Spotify, I'm sorry. The Gang Is All Here by Skid Row. So the headline act of our 7th album review is Arctic Monkeys and The Car. Would it be a welcome comeback for the legends that are Arctic Monkeys? Well, one has a feeling, maybe not. Let's find out, shall we? So, Trish, we're going to start with you then. Were you looking forward to this album?
I was.
And what did you think of Arctic Monkeys?
Well, Arctic Monkeys have gone from being a rock band which played with beating drums and guitar riffs to now a heavily orchestrated lounge act. This album is so far from the Arctic Monkeys I love, and it's not for the better in my eyes. They should stick to what their bread and butter is and what they do best, like in their self-titled album, Arctic Monkeys. The only track I liked on Car was Hello You, and like a car, they need to reverse and go back to their roots of their first album.
Lounge Lizard, Dave? Lounge Lizard? Lounge band? Really? The Arctic Monkeys? Would you agree with what Trish just said?
Well, this was an interesting one because when I went to listen to this, I knew this hadn't been very well received. So it was the first time I've actually gone into listening to an album expecting it to be bad. I really, really enjoyed their first album, and it was probably because it was relatable. There was a lot of they were singing about that you could relate to. And this album is a prime example of what happens when you have a bit of success and then disappear up your own arse. There's just no energy. Answers on the back of a postcard if you know what the fuck he was singing about in half of the songs. And this is a time when the sound engineer should have just slapped him and said, no, go back in, make a proper album, because this was shit.
Oh, Chris, this is the Arctic Monkeys. We can't be having any of this, surely.
Well, I don't know if you've ever been to Monkey World down in Dorset, but there are signs everywhere that say do not feed the monkeys. And I think this is why, because someone's clearly been feeding these monkeys a bucket full of Valium. I think they just sat in a room listening to the Smiths for about 6 months and then decided to go write an album. And they really shouldn't have. The thing is, there were little hints that it was still the same band. Some of the funky bass lines that they've put down that they're well known for and that kind of thing, there was hints of those, but I just don't know. I don't know. I knew it was divisive also and that it wasn't particularly well loved, but I still went into it with an open mind. But I can't even call it a rock album. It was just pap.
Oh, Ian, Arctic Monkeys for you?
So, I heard this album was rejected by Thyssen-Krupp, who make lifts. This wasn't rock. This was elevator music, and it was rejected by the most prominent lift elevator manufacturers, lift manufacturers in the world. It was dire. I don't. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what it was doing on a rock album, on a rock podcast. Obviously, based on their previous stuff, I know why it's there. But if it was just based on this album, it's like, why? And Dave, you said answers on the back of the postcard. I think you can actually write your answers on the back of a stamp as to what it was about. I did not enjoy that. I've written down one word to describe this: dire.
Wow. Well, am I going to buck the trend? A little bit. I think when I first listened to this, expecting it to be an Arctic Monkeys album, you would have hated it, and it was really bizarre because I went, it's not an Arctic Monkeys album. It's a prog rock album, out and out prog rock album. As if it is definitely a prog rock album. They've gone down that road, definitely. And I watched them actually. They were on the Jules Holland show, and very interesting in terms of what you said, Trish, in terms of that lounge kind of music approach. And actually, listen to it live. It was much better. It was a live recording, and it was actually better than I'd heard it on the album. So I went back and listened to it again, and I think this is an album that initially you're going to absolutely hate, but you probably want to listen to it. Very similar to like the Red Hot Chili Peppers that came out. Is there any sense to this? And it's not an Arctic Monkeys album as you know it. It's definitely more towards that prog rock sort of genre. I think personally, I listened to it again, and there were some parts of it that I actually quite enjoyed. Without it being an awful album when I first heard it, I think it grew on me a little bit. So, but certainly wasn't something that I would play.
Grew on you like a wart.
You what? Sorry.
Grows on you like a wart.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's there. It's irritating. It's a bit like Chris, really, isn't it? You know.
I'm sorry, I can't actually let you get away with that. Prog rock, no,
Definitely
no
prog
way.
rock.
No,
Definitely.
no,
Okay, right.
not
Definitely.
a chance.
Something like
Elevator music.
that, In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson, prog rock. Even Medicine at Midnight by the Foo Fighters, that is prog rock. This was just
Medicine at
tosh.
Midnight's not prog rock.
Oh yeah,
Not
blame
even
me.
close to prog rock.
Despite the fact for your love for it, it's still a prog rock
No
album. I don't care
way!
what you say.
No way is Medicine at Midnight by Foo Fighters a prog rock album. Not even
I think-
remotely
Charlie,
close.
calm down.
That's the worst comment
to
you've
be
made
fair-
all year.
To be fair, progressive rock first of all should be rock. This isn't, and it should be progressive.
It's got
I mean,
guitar in it.
progressively crap.
It's mellow rock.
maybe,
It's
but
definitely mellow rock. It's got guitar in it.
Shit.
it doesn't even fall in rock. Of
course it does.
No, I didn't feel it did.
Yeah, not all rock is 80s sci head banging.
No,
stuff.
this was easy listening. It was a very good, easy listening album.
It's
But
easy
listening
rock,
albums
then.
are pretty much crap.
Definitely
I don't know
easy
what
listening.
song it was. There was a great funk guitar riff in one of the songs. That's about the only good thing I can say about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong,
Okay.
guys. It was not a good album, but it wasn't an atrocious album.
So I'd just like to put a stake in the ground right now and say Hall of Fame album. Totally.
Yeah. Well,
Hall of
Ian and
Shame.
Trish will give it a 5 in a minute. You know. So let's go. Why? Well, could this be bottom of our pile? Let's find out, shall we? Trish.
0.5.
Dave.
Yep, 0.5.
Chris.
I couldn't even give it the 0.5, 0.
Ian.
I didn't understand how you could even give a 0, but now I do. 0.
Oh, harsh. 2.5 for me. 2.5.
Oh, 2.5. I don't think this could give it a 2.5 if you were ranking it out of a million.
No, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it, but it grew on me a bit. So, it's an average album, really. But there we go. So,
It's
dear.
a thrush album.
Did you have a tough month, Nige?
3.5.
Do you need a hug, mate?
Personally, do you need to have a chat about things
No,
at all?
I never got higher than a 2. I never got lower than a 2.5, and I never got higher than a 3.5. This was a distinctly average sort of 7 albums for me. So,
Have you been listening to the Smiths?
I know, right? I know. Well, if I give Susie
No,
and the
but you've
Banshees
been
3.5,
listening to Susie and the Banshees.
But it is, unfortunately, 3.5 is without any shadow of a doubt our lowest ever rating for an album. And this is the Arctic Monkeys, for God's sake. This is like, oh my God, this is an iconic band with iconic music. You know, I get why they wanted to try a different direction, but this was not it.
As I said, I think this is just a prime example of what happens if you have a bit of success. You're no longer able to relate to people like you could before. You disappear up your own arse, and then you produce this garbage.
I think there's the other side of it, which could possibly be, is they created some fantastic rock in the past. No question about it.
Oh, some of the best.
And I think maybe they've just said, do you know what? Let's just do what we want. If it's shit, it's shit. If it's good, it's good. We'll put it out there. If people like it, they like it. If not, possibly that could be the element to it as well. In which case, if that was the case, then more power to them just for doing something themselves and damning the, whatever the...
Yes.
Although we've been pretty harsh about them, I do have to give them quite a large amount of respect for actually going out and trying new things, because we've spoke about Skid Row, where we've said they've not moved on since the 80s. Arctic Monkeys, they have tried something new. They decided, you know what, we are going to try that thing and then see what happens. I can understand why it was divisive, because people just weren't expecting it. It is way out of left field for them. It's just not my thing. But, power to them for trying something. Unfortunately, I think it has backfired, and they're going to struggle to come back from this. But they tried it. Fair play to them.
It is number 1 in the prog rock album charts. Just saying.
There's a prog rock album charts?
Yeah, it's number 1.
Were Foo Fighters in it with Medicine at Midnight?
Not in it. I don't know. I just made that up. Okay. So, everybody, well, that for you guys means that you now, well, we'll find out tomorrow to see if anything else gets into our top albums of the year. So next month we will be reviewing our top albums and a couple of new albums that we're going to be reviewing. So, well, I never thought I'd see the day that Ugly Kid Joe would take the highest marks on our podcast, Ugly Kid Joe. So we will play a song. We'll play out with Arctic Monkeys and The Car. So let everybody else please give us some feedback. What did you think of Arctic Monkeys? Do you think it was a prog rock album? Do you guys out there think it was a divisive album or it was absolutely pamp? Do you agree with our ratings? Please leave your comments, give us some feedback. That would be amazing. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
It's good to be back, mate.
Yeah, good to see you. Maybe, and Chris and Ian, thanks very much, and
thank you very much. And I can't make it next month, but I am speaking with a certain agent that perhaps Slashy Crew Rocker.
Oh,
can
would we
take
get
my
back
place.
Slashy Crew Rocker for the end of the year show? That would be amazing.
I'll
We
keep you informed.
we'd like to see Slashy back, and
He's gonna.
talk about Slashy. Hi, Trish. Thank you very much.
Nice to have the gang all back.
I'll go back, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next show. And goodbye, everybody. Keep rocking out there. Thanks very much for listening to us and keeping us